All right, I hope everybody out there is having a good week. Welcome back to Through a Therapist's Eyes. I am Chris Gazdick, and as you know, I'm used to saying he is Craig Graves, but we, if you haven't been hearing in the last couple weeks, have made a change. We have gone into a guest co-host scenario where we're going to have a new person every month actually hanging out with us. And last week we had Casey hanging out with us. It was kind of a bit of an anomaly, 2 therapists and whatnot. So this week we have the start of the month with, we're going to say, we need like a drum roll or something, Adam. Mr. Adam Cloninger. Right? Yep. So he is going to be hanging out with us on Through a Therapist's Eyes, where we do not deliver therapy services in any way. I always like to highlight, I got the book out, Re-Understanding Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self. That is still flying around the world, I guess, in bookstores near you, Amazon and Books A Million and all those places that you can find it. I've gotten some feedback, and I think people are enjoying it, so that's pretty fun. The other big highlight that I've been doing, if you've been following in the last few weeks, is, Adam, I don't know if you listen. Have you listened to any of the past shows that we've done really much, actually?
Oh, yeah, I've listened to several. No, I listened to one, and then started listening to one on the way over here today. Actually, it's your episode from last week.
Yeah, that's
I was listening to. I got maybe 5 minutes into it, and then I got a phone call. So,
there you go. Well, we had a guy named Chris Lowrance that was on our show, and he's a police officer of 2 decades, man. I haven't told you this either. He's doing an amazing thing in supporting Blue Help, which is an organization that helps families of police officers that have completed the act of suicide, fire, and other first responders as well. And so this dude, can you imagine, started out a bike ride in Oregon, and he's going literally across the country. And I want all of the Through a Therapist's Eyes tribe to support him in what he's doing to kind of raise funds and awareness for police suicide and police mental health.
That's cool.
As well as first responder. Yeah, it's really neat. So everyone go onto Facebook, and you go into the groups section, and you click into search for groups, and you type in A Penny for Their Thoughts. And he's doing a bunch of Facebooks live. He's actually made it all the way to Yellowstone right now. So it's amazing what he's doing, and we had him on the show, and I think I'm going to have him on the show, hopefully, trying to arrange to get him back on post-trip, because it's just a stupid, amazing thing that he's doing.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, I love what he's doing for it. So the other thing is, on Through Therapist's Eyes, you can go to the counseling tab. I'd like to point out that you can get help with BetterHelp, that is online video conferencing and telephone therapy out of your own home. You support the counseling tab, or you click the counseling tab, supports the show. We get some reimbursement for that, and it's really a good service. So Craig, listen to me, man. Neil, did I just do that? He's shaking his head. And
he did do that.
Yeah, that's bad. I get my mind locked into a particular direction and way, and that's what I stay with.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yes.
I've been called way worse.
Craig. You are not Craig. He is Adam. Anyway, Adam, I say on the show that this is the human emotional experience, and we want to figure this thing out together. So you think you're down for that?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself, though, first off. Like, what brings you to the show? What's your interest in mental health? Like, what do you know about mental health, just kind of off the cuff? I know you personally outside of here, so I'm a little familiar with that. But what do you think about mental health, and what's your interest in it? What do you want to bring to the show? Why are you doing this? Tell us about you.
Oddly enough, it seems like some of my best friends are therapists for some reason.
That has been the case, hasn't it?
I didn't meet them during a session or anything like that, but I really don't know, other than I'm here to help out a friend. We're going to do this. Some people ask me, was I nervous about being on the episode? And I'm like, well, no. Are you excited about it? I'm like, well, yeah, a little bit. A little excited about it. It's something different. So I'm here to just talk about whatever we're going to talk about. I'll try to not be the person that's the squirrel on the show, because I can get sidetracked on other topics. So we'll talk about Bigfoot in a little bit.
Oh, wow. Bigfoot. What you know about Bigfoot?
About everything.
Sasquatch. You know everything about it. I believe you do. I believe. He ain't lying, y'all. That's the truth.
His real name is Tom.
Oh, dear. Not Craig.
No.
We could have gone with Craig. Craig does have a little bit of a long beard, and people have seen that picture. You think he could pass for a Sasquatch?
He's close.
He's close? Yeah. So
I haven't seen that. That's how long it's been since I've seen him. I haven't seen his beard.
Oh, you have not seen Craig's beard?
I don't think he had a beard last time I saw him. I mean, last time was we saw the MMA fight forever ago.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's been a little while.
Yeah.
You still watching MMA?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, what do you do for fun?
Kayak. I went last weekend, went kayaking. I like cars. Go up to West Virginia. My girlfriend lives in West Virginia.
The best state in the nation.
Yes, I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Like fixing stuff around the house, working on deck right now at my house. Almost done.
Neil, this dude, I got to tell you, is pretty handy. I mean, the deck is amazing. And what he has done with a car, holy crap. Like, he's got a car that, like, mechanically opens in 5 stages, moves down the back, has like this awesome metal arm that folds in on itself, and you fixed all that, didn't you?
Yeah. Yep. Sure did. Sure did.
I have some work on my Jeep that we're supposed to get to too, right?
We have to do that sometime.
Yes.
The Jeep needs help.
What do you mean by that, man? Should I take that personally?
No.
Let's fire into what we're talking about today. What's the headline there? What are we doing?
Episode 142, Maintain Yourself While Parenting, The Lost Decade.
You got kids?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when I say the lost decade, just part of what's cool about the guest co-host folks is they really are not from a mental health perspective audience. You guys know that. That's part of why I think we had to bust Craig out of here, man. Because remember Neil, he started to know too much, didn't he? He's shaking his head. You know,
We call those sexual intellectuals.
That know too much.
Yeah. They effing know it all.
Nah, he was very humble. Everybody knows him. So listen, this is a show that's interesting and not coming from a mental health perspective. I'll be curious what you see or hear or think, Adam, when you think of the combination of the parenting and what could a lost decade mean. When you think about the whole parent-child relationship that we're going to kick around tonight. Well, any idea?
Well, I mean, you do lose some time on your, I'll say, quote unquote, regular life when you have kids. You do. There's certain things you used to do. I mean, there's things that I used to do that I don't do anymore. Certain things like that. Right.
So, yeah. Let me tell you what I mean by it, and I think you're kind of dead on with it. Actually,
okay.
Really, I mean. This is a show. If you hear the show, it'd be fun to kind of get a conversation. Listen to the conversation Craig and I had. This is one of the ones that I kind of wanted to redo because, we.
So you've already had this episode before?
Kind of.
Okay.
Kind of. There's definitely some new slants to it, but all the way back on episode 20, we actually talked about this, and it's I think it's a legit original concept on my part, right? So there's not a lot of. I probably ought to write a blog and stuff. As a matter of fact, Neil, I did Google the lost decade in parenting, and that show popped up like second on Google. I thought that was cool because there's nothing else out there. There's nothing else out there that I think people have really talked about. And so this is a concept that I kind of created that comes from my clinical mind for sure, through a therapist's eyes. However, a lot of my own personal experience really kind of kicked into my own self in what I experienced being a parent, and then pulling my clinical awareness into what happens when you go through this crazy thing of, having a new baby.
Right.
Right. And so it really kind of goes along what it is that you just said. How'd you put it? You kind of lose time, or
there's certain things you don't do anymore. I mean, well, for me, my case was that I really wasn't wanting kids right then. End up having them, and then you automatically mature because you have to.
Right.
You start doing, I can't do that anymore. I got kids now,
Right.
That's not a good idea.
Right.
So
we won't ask what those things are.
No, I cannot divulge that information.
And so what do you do instead? Right?
Yeah. And that's what we're talking about, right?
Right.
So, I mean, you just do different things. You do, hopefully, the person that becomes a parent does more mature things and doesn't expose a child to things they shouldn't be exposed to. Such as, the parent may stop doing things they shouldn't be doing.
Basically
themselves.
No keg stands, right?
Yes, nothing like that.
No keg stands.
Yes.
Yeah, it was an amazing process being a parent, I feel like. I really feel like it's one of the things that is a before and after life event in our life that if you haven't experienced, it's really virtually impossible to get the full breadth of what that really is like.
True.
There aren't many other things that are that way.
True. For me, I didn't want kids, like I said at first, but then I got to say it's like the best things that ever happened to me.
Absolutely.
My kids mean everything to me.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. No. And so when my kids are 19 and 16 now. I guess this is a couple years ago we talked about this. So they were 17 and 14 at the time. And so for a few years, I was kind of aware of what happened in becoming a parent and going through all those elementary school years and middle school years and whatnot. And so, do you know what actually tipped me off in my mind, just experiencing this? I kind of turned around one day, Adam. I know you're going to appreciate this because I know you like video games too.
Yes,
Although
I do.
you still haven't killed any of those dang zombies, I bet.
I killed a few until I had to go save a friend.
Oh, dude, man. He's holding me responsible for not allowing him to play this
He gave
video
me
game.
the game, and then he ended up calling me when I was playing the game he has car breakdown, and I had to go drive a while to get
Go
it.
grab me.
Long story short, I haven't got back to the game yet.
At all. And that's been like, what? I'm going to bust you, man. 4, 5, 6 months, right?
No, it's been longer than that.
Has it been longer than
Yeah,
that?
I bet it's been a year.
Holy crap.
I bet it's been a year. Yeah, I bet it has.
We got to get some audience participation in, email in and say that, Adam needs to play all of us. It's an awesome video.
Yeah,
game.
I can do that.
Back to the thing, though. I absolutely realized, like, I had not played a video game in 10 years.
Last of Us, isn't it?
The Last of Us.
Is Last
all
of
of us? The Last of Us.
Last
right.
of Us.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was 10 years that I just didn't play any video games. And I'm like, dude, that's something that I've always done. And my kids were kind of getting a little bit older. And I'm like, dude, I need to get into play video games. And that was fun as all get out because
Right.
you can imagine 10 years of video game development, like what my eyes were experiencing.
And you're like, whoa.
Whoa, wow. It was crazy. But it showed me something that there was a lot of lost time in that. And it was just like this nexus. So I actually define the lost decade as being your oldest kid, age 4 to 14. And here's what I kind of tracked back in my clinical mind. So follow me, right?
Okay.
When a baby's born, you're kind of like, holy crap. What? I remember this very clearly. Like, I drove home with, my hand on the car seat and my other hand on the steering wheel. Like, I was that
right.
wrapped into, like, holy crap. Like,
Yeah.
this is, the whole way home that way.
This is first kid, though, right?
First kid.
Yeah.
Absolutely. First kid.
It's different.
It's different. It's absolutely different. And we walked into the house, and I'll never forget. We put, my wife and I put the baby on the couch, and we literally both like took 2 steps back. And I know we were just like both having like the surreal moment of like, what do you do now, right? And of course, you figure that out. You start doing the diapers and the bottles and all the caring that you do. And I was heavily involved in a lot of that. Like more on that later on, but a year, 2 years in, you start realizing, okay, like, this isn't ending. This is like permanent. And I think that there's a natural reality of like, holy crap, thank you, Mom and Dad, for doing this for me. And I think that happens somewhere around 3.5 years. It dawns on you like, holy crap, this is, I'm repeating the process of what my parents did. And then you kind of hit about the age 4, I feel like, and you just get in cruise control. And now it's just all kid all the time. They're walking, they're talking, they're doing their stuff. You get the Cub Scouts, the dance class, the church
Right.
activities. It's just, it's all like you just go smooth through. And before you know it, boom, like it's a decade later, literally.
Yes.
Right? So I looked back on that and I call it the lost decade. And we'll go in through why that's kind of the case. But I'm curious just kind of what your experience is or what thoughts you have in your own parenting of all that,
I can
right?
totally see that, but with my case, it was a little bit different, and it had to do with my job. I used to work second shift.
Right.
So, and I can take a very good example, okay? I had just come to first shift back in 2007, I think, and my son's young then, and I remember I'm talking to him one day.
And how old are they now?
My boy's 22.
Yeah.
My daughter's 20. So one day he wanted to. I remember I've been on second shift their whole life. Now I'm on first shift, and my son says something about I'd like to do something. I can't remember what it was, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's fine. Go ahead and do that." And he's like, "I don't know." I'm like, "Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, go ahead and do it." And he's like, "I don't know." I'm like, "What do you mean you don't know?" Well, Mommy's not gonna let me do that. I don't know if it's okay. I'm like. But yeah, it's okay. I'm telling you to. I don't know. I said, I'm starting to get mad now. So I'm like, what do you mean you don't know?
I told you it's good.
By God, I told you it's good.
Right.
You're going to do it now, whether you want to or not.
Right.
So it's something like that. So I mean, but I can totally see what you're talking about the 10 years. And then from my perspective, kind of from that point on, it's been 10 years since then, and I'm starting to get to the point where I'm doing stuff again. I guess I started later
Right.
than 4. Of course, my daughter's a couple years younger than that, so, but still.
Yeah, and it is interesting that, I was talking to somebody actually this morning. We'll go into this later, but who's the honorable mention? I told her I was going to give her an honorable mention. That's somewhere in my notes. I'll get to it when I get there. But interesting that there were some gender differences that she wondered about. So this is an honorable mention to Lee. We agreed we'd call her Lee.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that there's also, like you say, shift work, and different people have different circumstances, that kind of like she kind of started talking about male involvement in early, nurturing roles.
Right.
And I mean, honestly, we got 3 men in the room here. I'd be curious what both of you would say, because I think that men have very much been way more involved in the nurturing of kids and and that type of thing than in past generations. Would you agree with that? Generally speaking?
Yeah, I guess I would. I've never really thought about it, but yeah, I think I would agree with that.
And you even work in like a man, there are many women that work at the manufacturing plant that you're at, but it particularly earlier in your career, I'm sure it was male dominated.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say that. Yeah, we've got way more women working there now than before.
Yeah.
When I first started working there, there were women, but it's not as many.
Yeah, which is interesting because now women are working more too.
Correct.
Neil, what would you say? Would you say men are kind of engaged more in the early nurturing and whatnot?
Yeah, it's picked up. Yeah, I think over the last probably 15 years, it's become more prevalent.
Yeah, he's kind of saying it's picked up over the last 15 years.
I was getting ready to say, remember he has no microphone.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, we had a conversation off mic on that. Well, let's change that, Neil. Yeah, that's the way I define it, and I think that the way I thought I'd layer this show out is kind of thinking about, if that's at all an accurate definition, which I think it's definitely, fluctuates from family to family, but there is a large swath of time that is kind of lost in the minds and eye of ourselves. And so I titled this Maintain Yourself, because you really, really, really have a strong tendency to lack maintenance of yourself in lieu of taking care of the awesome responsibility of being a parent. And I maintain that if we're not careful, that causes emotional harm in some ways.
Yeah, and it could cause harm to the kids too.
Right. So we're going to go through that, which is perfect segue. How would you say harm to the kids? I think you're absolutely right.
Well, I mean, for example, if say somebody used to be really into working out or taking care of themselves, eating healthy or whatever, and now they put that on a back burner to do the things for their child or whatever. Later on, they may start having health issues. So now the child or even young adult, may have to help care for their parents more, or doctor's appointments or anything.
Sure.
Well, I mean, you think about, okay, well, say I went and became obese or whatever because I stopped. I mean, that might be
definitely lose health and you pick up weight.
Yeah, you can. I mean, age does that too.
Right.
But if you stop taking care of yourself, if that's something you used to do, and now the child is seeing you, well, he's starting to gain weight. It's not as important.
What is it called? The daddy bod, dad bod.
Yeah, they say the women like it. I just don't know about that.
I know, right? I don't think that's true either. Well, you kind of went in a different direction than I thought with that, and that's fine. That's kind of affecting the individual parent, right? So I was doing brainstorming on that, and I was reminded of my brother's accusation over the phone conversations over the years. He always accused me of wanting to be like the super dad. And we know that there's like a super mom complex, like, mom in her cape does everything,
Now, does he have kids?
Yep. No, interesting. Good point. None of his own.
Right.
But he's largely basically fully raised both of his stepkids. So there is a difference there.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Which is actually something that we probably won't get to tonight, but the blended family aspect and step parenting, maybe we'll try to throw that in, but I don't know if we're going to have time. But no, he just tried to, accuse me of becoming the parent of the year. That was always my goal, because I was doing the Cub Scouts and, coaching the kids in all the sports and, doing the youth stuff at the church, the activities, and just all these things running all around. And he kind of looked out from the outside and looked at me. He's like, dude, stop, you're trying to be, the parent of the year and do all this stuff. And, and it can get into your head. Now, I didn't think I was trying to do that. I was just doing a parent job. It's what parents do.
Well, if that's what you want to do, I mean, that's important to you. So
Right.
why not?
Well, yeah.
In a way, that's
if that's the driving force.
yes.
And if it's not the driving force, because there's a lot of parent guilt that goes in to the mix, kind of driving your energy a lot of times.
What do you mean?
Parent guilt. So I've often kind of maintained that one of the worst things we do in society is blame parents constantly for all of the problems that are going on with kids.
Okay.
Parents get completely blamed. And I think that new parents, if you're a new parent out there, part of your terror of, can I handle this awesome responsibility? Because I know parents are blamed for large things, whether you consciously think that or subconsciously think that. Parent guilt is a major factor in how you kind of run around and drain your energies and try to do all these super things and worry about the right nutrition and the right diet. The mom, has to take the folic acid and all the other supplements and pills and medications to make sure that she's doing right, even starting from conception. Because
I think part of that too is the first child is different than the second child or third child. And
true.
You may remember there was a few years ago there was a commercial. I can't remember exactly. The woman was going, and the first child, she kept everything all neat and organized, and everything was all sterilized, and the room was all white. And the second kid, she's like holding on to the kid by one arm, and she like picks up candy off the counter and shoves it in a Ziploc bag. It shows
Sure.
the difference between kids.
I think I do remember what you're talking about.
Kid 1 and kid 2. So, I mean, maybe part of that might be just the actual first parent thing. Maybe not so much the guilt. I don't know, maybe.
I think you're right. I think you're right, because you hear all these things and you want to do it right and you want to get it, be the perfect parent, the perfect mom, and you're so terrified that you're doing something wrong. And, dude, when we put Aaron on, do you do that too? I call my kids the wrong name all the time.
It totally messed me up a couple times, like at your house, and I hear Adam this, Adam that. I'm like, what is that?
Which one? Oh, yeah.
Huh? What?
Well, that's different. He has the
that.
same name as my oldest kid,
Yeah.
Adam, or my youngest kid. Anyway, I remember when we put Aaron down on the couch, and it was kind of like, dude, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this right. Like, what do we do next? This is crazy. And I think that's the fear that you go into with this awesome responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so my brother's accusation trying to be a parent a year, I think, is how, in part, that affects the individual. The other is, I think you touched on it. That's where you went, in a direction of like just feeling totally tired and run down. And I'm not talking about baby time. I'm not talking about, not sleeping and dealing with the bottles and all this. This is kind of after this in elementary school and all. I mean, your efforts are running around. Dude, I don't have a lot of those activities after work. I don't know how I went after work and did like another 5-hour activity, with the kid most nights in through the week.
And I don't either.
Much respect to all you that are parents, to elementary schools in your 40s.
Y'all are awesome.
And, it's a lot. So you really, really get run down. That is a major effect. Another thing that I think, because you get run down, is if you happen to have any anxiety or depression or legit mental health factors that are just unrelated to anything else, guess what happens to those when you're in these stressful time periods?
What?
It gets aggravated. It gets elevated. You become more anxious. You become more depressed, and it kind of has a tendency to pile on. And then lastly, I think you mentioned too as well. You get out of shape. You worry so much about what you're cooking for your kid and making sure they're getting their vegetables and their carrots and whatever. And then what are you eating? Let me grab the Pop-Tart. Let me get the thing out the door.
What's left in the refrigerator?
Anything. Yeah, right.
You want that last piece? Yeah, sure. You can. I know I didn't want it at all. Here, go ahead.
Right. So all of those things just get centered out onto, what am I trying to do for the little guy or gals that are in the house. Now, something to fire off here. I remember when I did these concepts with Craig a couple years ago, we were talking about this. At some point he kind of chimed in. He's like, dude, I mean, it sounds like this is a negative thing. And I just got reminded of that. Like, I love the way you started out today. Like, this is one of the most beautiful things that can happen to you in your life. I believe that. So there's so much enjoyment. I mean, I look back on all those times, and it's just an amazing time. So much fun.
It is.
So many experiences, so many new things that came into my life that would not have come into my life otherwise. So I would not have changed any of this in the world. And I think we did a pretty good job. We got through it. Nothing was perfect. you know. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful experience. You know, if people that don't have kids might listen to the show, like, oh, well, these are all the reasons why I never want to have kids.
Right. You won't understand unless you had kids.
You know? So it is.
I've actually told my son that.
Did you?
Yep.
How did he respond?
Recently. Because he's like, oh, I don't want to have kids. I'm like, you know, I really didn't want to either, but you're here and you're awesome, man, you know? So,
right.
It's a beautiful thing.
But there is sacrifice.
True.
But
there's also a reward.
There's sacrifices and rewards. I think you grow the most when you hurt the most. You struggle a lot. You grow a lot. You know, those are phrases that I really put a lot of credence into. But, dude, I mean, given that it's beautiful, there's also pitfalls that we want to try to avoid so that those before you can kind of help you understand, A, it's really possible, and B, these are some of the things you need to be aware of because you can also very much go into a lot of turmoil and then just suffocate that down, and long-term stress just doesn't get dealt with, and you pay for that later. You can absolutely pay for that later. So this is a bit of a preventative idea in being aware of the lost decade so that you can really go through these time periods in the cycle of life for your family in a way that's more productive. So along those lines, let's talk about the marriage. You know, I thought, what are the impacts of marriage, particularly?
Like we need more stressors.
What do you mean by that?
Well, a marriage can be stressful.
Right.
It can be wonderful, too.
Right.
It's like having a kid. It can be wonderful or very stressful.
I think you're the most beautiful thing that ever happened. Oh, my God, you're the devil's spawn. What's wrong with you? Right? It's a lot of emotions all wrapped up, and you're right. I think marriage has that, a lot of that. We talk about marriage on the show a lot. This definitely can, listen, we know that marriages struggle the most when you're in the toddler age time period and when you're in the teenage time periods. Those are when marriages have the most challenge.
Well, something else to think about here. You're talking about the lost decade. A lot of marriages don't last 10 years.
Yeah, that's true. And some of that might be kind of moving into this time period that you're really not adjusting well, and the stress kind of couples and doubles and triples, and before you know it, you're not coping that well. And if you think about 4 to 14, that's after the toddler years, you know, and you kind of get into like, dude, what are we doing? This is, wow. And so I wonder if this lost decade concept is a part of that. I don't know. I'd have to really think about that. It's an interesting, in the real time thought, you know. But so marriage, right? That's the typical things that you would think about, you know. I mean, you get into lots of arguments about parenting and what the strategies are and what the traditions are going to be, you know, how we go about, do we spank our kid? One parent says, oh, absolutely. The other one's like, oh, heck no, you know. So you really can get into dangerous blaming back and forth of my strategy's right, yours is wrong, and I don't want to do that. I want to do this. And so this can be a topic of great distress. And then just simply being all involved in the activities, you can kind of lose connections. So you lose time.
You mean
activity.
Connections with friends, or
you kind of lose a lot of friends, you know, in this time frame. You know, you don't do the couple's activity. You know, you don't do the, hey, why don't you guys come over for dinner? Well, I got my kids need bedtime and we got to be quiet at that point, but I'll catch you next time. I'll take a rain check.
Right.
You know. And now you don't have many activities that you're doing just as an individual, just as a couple.
We're not going to club Friday night. I got a kid.
No keg stands. I don't know why keg stands always like in my brain. I think it's like I did it once in college. It was really cool. And that's always what makes me think of parties. I think
it's repressed memories.
Probably. Balancing grandparents is another thing I thought about in brainstorming. Oh, my
goodness. I know.
Right?
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of pressure in, hey, these are my parents. They just want to be here. The other parents, like, they want to be here all the time, every day.
And I didn't mind so much the grandparents and stuff, but sometimes I didn't like when they start trying to make changes that I don't agree with.
Right? Yeah. You know, there's a whole family dynamic that kind of kicks into this, and in your marriage, you're balancing, you know, how do we deal with your parents? How do we deal with my parents?
I remember making the statement one time. Somebody said, well, my parents want to do this. And I was kind of mad about it. And I'm like, well, and my ex she was the only child. And I said, "Oh, really? I've got 2 kids. How many do they have?"
Wait,
I've got more experience than they do. I've had 2 kids. They've only had 1.
Oh, wow. Yeah, right.
So
Lots of opinions fly out. Lots of judgment and opinions and, challenges that, you're going to see things differently because you're 2 different people and you're 2 whole different family systems. And so the boundaries with that can create great distress. Some grandparents, by the way, they're very, very involved. Other grandparents, listen, I want my baby time and I'm done. And
right.
And there's no right or wrong in any of that. It's okay either way. There's challenges, there's advantages and disadvantages.
I had both.
I did too.
Yeah.
Yeah, my parents were less involved, hers were more involved, and that presents differently. But that can be very painful. Particularly when you do disagree or have problems. Another thing with marriage, I thought real quick, when you start flying through these a little bit more, because I want to focus on the end on how do you manage these things? What do you do with them? So, boy, what do babies do to your finances, Adam?
I had a really nice car back in the 90s.
Yeah? You like car. You're a car guy.
I wish I still had that one, but I had to get rid of it. If I had it now, it's worth like 3 times what I bought it for back then. But
he's being calm, but I know that's painful.
That's how it happens.
It's painful, isn't it?
Yep. It was the best decision at the time. You had to get rid of it for the kids.
And it's a part of what we do.
Yep.
And you worry, you think about how we manage these finances. What do we do? I want to highlight one of the things I call the trifecta. 3 super valuable things that I do see work in the field that I have chosen for my life's work. One is with love and logic for parenting. I'm going to mention that when we talk about solutions and stuff. The other is emotion-focused therapy for marriage. We've talked a lot about that on the show. And the last is this one. Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. You ever hear of that?
I have not.
You have not?
Nope.
Oh, dude, it is an awesome set of concepts. It's not perfect. Some people have some problems with particularly the investment side of it and all, but he really has a program that helps couples rather, whether you're a parent or not, to really combine your ability to have discussions about money, right? Which, by the way, these are flashpoints. There's marriage realities in your relationship that are foundational. A lot of the EFT stuff that we talk about applies. But I call them flashpoints that seem to be the problems, though there's the undercurrents that we've talked about in other shows about marriage. But parenting and finances are 2 of the big flashpoints, as well as extended family, and all of that. These are things that we'll fight about, we'll argue about, have trouble about. Not the real issues, but boy, when it circles around kids, you get a lot of them coming all at once, and finances is one of them. So anyway, Financial Peace University is a great time in life to really get layered into how do we manage this stuff together, rather than the typical is one person manages, the other person doesn't want to deal with it, and you kind of get really disconnected about it. So when there's a lot of financial pressure as kids create, that's another impact on marriage. Let's move on to the last of the big areas that I was brainstorming. And how does the lost decade affect the actual parent-child relationship? So, you know what a helicopter parent is, Adam, right?
No, I do not. I'm going to ask you what exactly you meant by helicopter parent.
Okay, interesting. So that's a standard kind of parent descriptor that's out there. There's some documented stuff that's out there, and people have kind of layered different parenting strategies into like what they look like. One of them is a helicopter parent. So I'm surprised you've never heard of that. Overbearing, kind of worried, controlling everything, monitoring,
Hovering.
just being hover. It's
Okay, I got you.
on the what's the show, the 80s show that's now done where the smother. Save me. What is the show? Growing Pains is not right.
I'm a TV buff. I should know this.
No, it's out now, man. I got nothing in my brain.
80s show?
For it. Well, it's based on the 80s, but it's made now, and it's actually real videos that the people show at the end of the show. And you got the dad who always sits in his underwear. You got the older sibling, and you got the little guy who's... And anyway, the mother is total smother. She's a smother. Nothing?
Goldbergs?
Thank you. Good Lord. Yes, the Goldbergs.
I watch too much TV, and that's a show I don't even watch. But
Yeah, it's the Goldbergs.
Okay.
She's a smother. She's a helicopter parent.
Okay.
She's always in the school. She's always in the kids' activities. She basically goes on the kids' date, right? So that's what a helicopter parent is.
She's a Karen parent.
Yes. That's another way of looking at it. Evidently, these don't exist because nobody identifies himself as that, right? Denial.
That's what I said, denial.
Yeah. Neil says denial. You know, and that's a reality, though, when you're really dealing with these young kids with the awesome responsibility. We absolutely, even if it's not to that level and you don't see it to that level, listen, perfect parenting is right in the middle, and that ain't none of us. You're either over-parenting or under-parenting, probably. Can we say that?
True.
Right?
Yes.
You know, nobody's perfect. And so, you know, this helicopter idea and over-parenting, you know, is really because you care so much about this role and you take it so seriously. But the effect is that the kids don't learn from, you know, the mistakes that they make and the things that they got going on, which is a perfect space to kind of plug the love and logic strategies.
You got to let them make mistakes.
Exactly. Part of the solution with a lot of this, anytime we talk about parenting, I often bring up love and logic. You ever hear love and logic?
Sure.
That sounds like enough.
Tell me what you mean by love and logic.
Love and logic is a parenting strategy that I think is absolutely fantastic. We've done a whole show on that before, and I encourage you to kind of look back, go to throughatherapisteyes.com, hit the search bar, and type that in, and you'll see some really cool content with the idea that these guys have as a whole mentality around how to manage the kids' behavior. And it absolutely allows for the mistakes the kids need to make. It allows for, you know, prevents over-parenting. It actually highlights your parent-child relationship where you're taking care of yourself, managing that so that you can then be highly involved in the kid's life, but yet not in a way where you're over-parenting. So here's the line of logic. Kid, you can do anything that you want to do as long as it doesn't cause a problem for somebody else. Yep. And then when it causes a problem for somebody else, then you have to fix that problem that you've created with your behavior, your decision, or whatever. Of course, the kid's not going to see any problem. So you say, okay, wait a minute. I see that there's a problem that you haven't fixed. No problem. Don't worry about it. And then you circle around on the back end and you take care of the problem. And this creates a high structure environment where the kid is absolutely within bounds that you create, you know, of appropriate behavior and decisions without power struggles. It's an awesome set of theories it's an awesome set of mentality that helps guide you in, what do I do with this one? So the structure, when you come about and they refuse to fix their problem, you know, if they don't clean up their clothes, you take the clothes and you take them away for a while and they just get gone. They get missing.
Okay, I see where you're going now.
Right? And then they get a present, 6 months later, it's the clothes that you took away that they get back. They don't know, whatever. So
they're like, what is this?
Right. They done forgot. Or whatever strategies there might be. It's love and logic. Well, I'm going to get off it because we can spend the whole time on that. But it's a way to prevent yourself from over-parenting and actually under-parenting too, because you're in there observing what your kids are doing and when there's problems get created. Tough love is a part of that. I wrote too much involvement can lead to too much direction. All you dads out there listening, did your kids play a lot of sports, Adam?
They did not.
They did not, really?
Not. Ethan tried a couple things. Chloe really never was into sports.
Did you ever try to tutor your kids?
Oh, my God.
Right?
Yeah.
How's that work out?
Yeah, my daughter doesn't like me trying to teach her anything.
Right.
And it was always, I don't want to understand it. I just want to know the answer.
It does not work. I learned this from my wife directly, honestly. You cannot be your tutor when you're the parent. You cannot be the coach when you're the parent. It's very difficult to be the dance coach or, any of those roles, particularly as your kids get older. Now you can get away with it when they're 6, 7. I did a lot of coaching on my kids. But at some point, in this lost decade, you begin to start soaking into the realization that they're going to engage the world on their own, and that ain't you. That's them going out
right
and engaging the world. And you progress in understanding where you take steps back. This has been a sad day that I really kind of realized, I can't coach my kids anymore. They need to be, dealing with other people.
Well, you have to do that.
You have to step back.
You have to wean them off.
You have to wean them off and
You
step
have
back.
to kick that bird out of the nest and see if they fly.
Absolutely. And that happens younger than you would think. By the time they start hitting their teens. That's where we talked about the gender, when what is her name? Lee. She was talking about, is there a gender difference? So more on that in a second. Lastly, when it comes to the parent-child relationship, they really have to develop their own interests. They really, every parent's going to tell you, oh, yeah, we're all involved in all the big travel sports and, this really big dance camp, and they're on the nationals with whatever.
But is that what the kid wants to do?
That's the question. What is that question again?
What is that what the kid wants to do?
Right? And the answer to most parents are going to say yes.
Are you sure?
Are you really sure? Right? Because remember, when you kind of get sucked into the lost decade, you kind of lose a lot of those things of yourself and your self-interest. Well, those interests didn't just disappear. They're yours, and they become,
you've made them your kid's interest.
Right?
You're going to have a little bit of that.
Absolutely. We all do that. The only reason why my kids know how to play chess today is because I liked to play chess. If I didn't like to play chess, they wouldn't know how to play chess. I'll make that argument.
New weekend activity for us.
Do you know how to play chess?
Yes, I do.
Holy crap, that's awesome.
Yep.
For real?
Yes, for real.
Dude, I haven't had a good chess player to play with for a while. We're definitely going to do that. That is awesome. So, okay. Thoughts, questions, and I want to kind of spend the time moving forward on what do you do about this and how do you kind of manage it. But what are you hearing? What are you thinking over there, man? What whole big
what am I thinking?
Lost decade and how it affects the different relationships and factors moving around.
What specifically part of it you want to talk about?
Well, I was just checking in with you, man. As far as is this making sense?
It is. It is.
You think of what people are listening to and hearing about this, and what people listening might be thinking.
It's kind of strange for me because I can see what you're talking about, but for me, I had that time where I wasn't with my kids for so many years because I didn't realize it because I'm going to work and I'm working the weekends and stuff. I didn't realize it, and then later on I did.
Yeah,
there's still a 10-year thing. I think you might be nailing it about the 10 years because even if it's 4 to 14 or 7 to 17 or whatever. I think there is like a 10-year span. You go there, you kind of grow as a parent. When I don't want to say when I got thrown into it, but there's like a lot of activities that I wasn't involved in because you work second shift, you get home, they're asleep.
Yeah, right.
You get up and they're already at school.
Right.
So you see them on the weekends, but wait a minute, you got to work on the weekend too.
Right.
So then you don't see your kids that much, and then in the holidays they're like all over you, hey Dad, everything. So,
well, let's stay with this for a minute, because that's a really fascinating kind of component, and maybe you might have some thoughts. I haven't. Well, I've worked with a lot of step parents too, so maybe let's spin around on this for just a second. And see, what are the impacts of step parenting with this and shift work, because there's a lot of people, and this is fascinating to me because I haven't really thought about it in this sense.
About shifts.
Shift work, the step parenting part of how that works. Like I've helped a lot of step parents realize, a lot of their roles and how that works. That's a whole show, so we probably can't cover a lot of that. But so you're kind of saying that during a lot of the younger years, you had that shift that was really interfering.
Right.
And we've talked a lot with police officers and first responders.
And I missed out on a lot of things.
Military families, right. So but that ended at some point that you were able to really engage.
And that's one the example I gave you earlier about, my son would do something and I was starting to get, upset that he didn't understand that I can make the rules too.
Right.
And then it kind of sunk in. I'm like, well, he's thinking that mom always makes the rules or whatever, and everything that he does has to be acceptable to mom. But like, there's the other parent too,
right? And
it really kind of upset me when I thought about it. I thought, well, damn, I've been kind of gone for a while, so that may have changed me. Maybe that's when my 10 years started.
Yeah, I think so. So the addendum there is that once you really seem to get engaged and buy in, then man, it really pops into, I mean, did you almost feel like you have to play catch up or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like
absolutely.
I know I missed so much and now I got to double down
Yeah.
and, do a better job as a dad. And I already screwed up and I don't want to screw up anymore. Whatever kind of spins around. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it almost takes a decade to like flow through that and be like, wait a minute, I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. They're okay. I didn't kill them. They didn't kill me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. And I'll think about this, guys, as well, in the step parenting realm, because I would imagine for a step parent, they come in at whatever point and then they really buy in as well. And it takes that time to like, okay, well, how do I be a really good step
So
parent?
what you're saying, maybe the step parent may have to have that 10-year all over again with the new kid?
Because they
yeah.
jump into that and they want to be a great step parent. And that kind of is what dominates, their thinking. I know that because I've talked to a lot of people in therapy about that. They feel like I'm, too much of a friend and I'm not a parent or I'm not enough parent and, and how do I do this? And, and the kid doesn't like me and I'm not, they scream at me that I'm not their mommy. And so I don't know how to handle that and just all that stuff. And so it's just, you spin and spin and spin trying to do, a good job with the awesome responsibility. So that's just some of my meandering thoughts from a lot of the conversations I've had over the years. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's transition. How do we
Okay.
manage this? How do we exemplify health so that, what's the title, man? So how do we maintain ourselves when we're dealing with these awesome responsibilities?
Maintain yourself while parenting.
Right? It's doable. It's important. It helps you to be effective in the role when you're maintaining yourself. Because if you don't maintain yourself, guess what happens? Can't maintain anything else, that's for sure. Right?
Right.
So, this is perfect spot to highlight for the 27,000th time on Through a Therapist size, self-care. Have you heard any of the shows where I've talked about self-care?
Again, I've heard one episode completely, and then I'll start to listen to it.
Yeah.
I know you're thinking, come on, man.
I know, man. What's the deal? Where's the support? No. Self-care is the cornerstone of mental health, right? So it is, and I don't take any offense. My family and friends don't want to listen to stuff either. They're like, dude, nah, not at all.
No, actually, I don't listen to any podcasts. So, I mean, there's...
Yeah, we're going to turn you on to the podcast world.
I don't even listen to Joe Rogan.
Oh, really?
I love Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I see bits and pieces of when I'm like, fast forwarding or whatever. So
I've absolutely found podcasts to be wonderful. I've turned on to it about a year before I created this one. Dude, I get all my Pittsburgh Steelers information. I get all my Pittsburgh Pirate and Penguin information. Totally clues me in. You're going to love podcasts. I'm going to turn you on. Since you're on it, you might as well listen to some.
Yep.
Yeah, right. Self-care is the cornerstone of mental health. Fun, relaxing, enjoyable activities that help you to disengage from all the stress that's around you. And then you re-engage. So they're not self-destructive in any way, and they're not work-related tasks. This is what I call the cornerstone of mental health. Make sense?
It does.
Cornerstone. Absolutely crucial. If you're not doing that, you're really not going to be able to manage mental health factors well.
Like start doing some of the activities you used to do?
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's if you can get that early on in your parent-child relationship and re-engage those things, and there were several for me. Like, I stopped riding my bike, man. I've ridden my bicycle, my mountain bike, I was trying to say, for years. That's something I still haven't picked back up. Right? I know. Neil's pointing at me. He got me like...
You're neglecting your health. We just talked about this.
Yes, this is true. Hey, Craig's not here, man. I don't need you people busting my chops about my... All right. Well,
Chris, lay on the couch.
Maybe I do need that. I need that a lot. I'm not going to lie. Keep on me, guys. Yeah, the producer Neil's like, dude, you used to ride bikes, man. I got a bike that you can guide. We're going to ride. So now I want to play chess with you. I want to ride bikes with you. We're going to get us all together. But I didn't. I stopped riding, when I had kids. But I didn't realize it. Stopped playing the video games. Didn't realize it. One of the things I maintained all the way throughout, all the time, is Pittsburgh Steelers. That was one of the things I was kind of like, look, I don't want to lose this. I'm at my house. I was slave until 3 months ago. I was slave to DirecTV with the NFL package. I'm finally out. Which is interesting. I'm 20 years in, and I'm still having like impacts from the way that life was before. And those are a few examples, actually.
Well, change is good.
Change is awesome.
Change is good. Stop watching TV and start riding your bike.
Stop that. Don't bust my chops. But go with what you mean there. Seriously, change is good. What do you mean?
Oh, for example, next week I start a new job.
Right?
I mean, same company, but it's time for me to do something different.
You said you listened to last week's show.
Well, I started to.
Change
then
is hard.
Then I got a phone call.
Oh, there you go. We covered how difficult and scary that change people struggle with that. And I didn't realize that till you said that. But when you become a parent, that's scary. And then you go into this and it's kind of like, wow, well, let me take this on. There's a lot of psychological things going on in all of that. Let's get off self-care and kind of go along with, I got to back up. I mentioned the honorable mention with Lee. We were literally talking about this morning. So I know she'll hear this. I got you on here, girl. So I don't really think a lot about gender differences. We got 3 guys in the room, so we're going to struggle a little bit with what the female side of this is. And we talked about it this morning kind of at length a little bit in how does the genders work in, so whereas the lost decade and how this kind of goes. She maintained that, women have a harder time in disengaging and letting go. That's her quote. And she says, quote unquote, we don't want to. So she's kind of thinking.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
It convinced me a little bit. It really got my brain working, right? Because she kind of maintains that, well, she maintained initially, too, that in the beginning, that women are more in the nurturing role and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's so much so. I think men equally so much, shift work notwithstanding, Adam, for you, and what you were struggling with when trying to be engaged and involved while at shift, on the second shift, we really get bought in, men do as well in the beginning. But towards the end, it does sound quite possible that somewhere around 12, 13, 14, 15 men are kind of like, okay, yo, you got this. Kind of, get on the bicycle and ride on, right? Like, let's go. Whereas women spend a lot more time. She kind of was thinking all the way through school. Like, it's my job as a mom, see you all the way through. I'm not stopping. We got to do this until I might even maintain the kid moves out. I don't know.
Well, I think that I'm going to partly disagree with you. That I think there are differences between men and women. For example, and it's funny we're talking about this now because I was talking about it earlier today. I have no problem in saying women are better multitaskers.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a thing where, early man. If the women aren't better multitaskers, then your 5 kids, you don't have 5 kids, you got 2 kids because 3 of them disappeared. Fair. And there was also discussion about like say answering a response or whatever. Men are like, in my opinion, we're like the centaurs. We're the ones that want to handle the current biggest threat right now. That's our main thing.
Right.
We're not worried about all the other things at once. We want to tackle the biggest thing, and that's the
protection, producing. Some of the, limbic system is hardwired in our brains to provide and that kind of thing. Yeah. I follow you.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, there are differences I see, Adam, in a lot of ways, but I think I focus more on the emotional matters, and I don't feel like there's a lot of differences in a lot of that. When you talk about marriage and all that kind of stuff, I think it gets overplayed is probably a better way of putting it.
Okay.
Because men are very much emotionally involved. Maybe we'll get a marriage show and when you're on, and we'll talk more about some of that because, there are some women that just absolutely do not want to be emotional. They don't want to be all hallmarky and all this kind of stuff. It has a lot to do with some other traits that kind of play out in how you manage attachments, As a matter of fact, sometimes people, particularly women during, postpartum experiences after they have the baby, they're very, very confused because they don't want to have anything to do with that child. That's a real issue.
Total flip.
That's
on year 11, though.
What's that?
That's on year 11.
It's on year 11. What do you mean?
Instead of 10 years, the decade is on the year 11. That's when they want to separate.
I don't follow. I'm totally lost.
We're talking about the lost decade.
Right.
And that's 10 years. So I'm saying
Oh.
after the 10 years out, they're like, nope, I'm done.
We check out at okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that there's differences in genders for sure in a lot of biological marking ways, really, but in a lot of emotional ways, I don't know, not as much. And so, but this is one. I think she might be really very much onto something that women definitely have a hard time disengaging, and oftentimes the male role in a relationship is to help that disengagement because it needs to happen. So I just thought it was an interesting little component of the gender differences. So let's move on to what do we do. So I mentioned self-care. I mentioned a little bit about love and logic. Dude, that's a great standby whenever you got questions about how do we manage this parent-child relationship and such.
Getting back to your friends.
Yes. That's probably on my list somewhere. What do you mean? Go on with that.
Well, I mean, you mentioned highlight value of friendship.
Mm-hmm.
There's a long time I went with, what really wasn't hanging out with people.
Right.
Now my kids are getting older, and I'm getting around that, I'm past that 10-year decade. I'm starting to do things again. I'm starting to kayak now. And
it's funny because I've known you for a few years. I can't imagine you not engaging with friends and everything and all that. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard for me to see that. But that's a very real type thing. Yeah. Listen, friendship, you've got to have friendships throughout the time throughout the whole life cycle of a family. When you lose that, you lose a big piece of what just makes us sane, I would say even. Like friends make you sane. They help you have outlets. They help you have objective feedback. There's so many things that gets lost in the lost decade, right? Order of priorities is a big factor. I think before the mics came on, we were talking about this, Adam. God, self, spouse, family, friends, kids, or family, friends, and then work, right? So we've talked about this on the show before. Actually, it wasn't before the mic's on with you. It was somebody else earlier today. I was talking about this in a session, right? This order of priority really kind of feeds directly against the idea that the kids become the priority. If religion's not in your sphere of influence, that's fine. God can be at the top of the list. If not, yourself, right? So God's self, you've got to be at the top.
Which totally contradicts how some of this actually works in those 10 years.
It absolutely does, right? How do you mean? What do you hear with that?
We're talking about the things the priorities you set aside
right
during that 10 years. And then I guess now we're talking about,
solutions.
Are you referring to the time after the 10 years? Or are you referring
during,
to
before,
it should
and
be
after.
happening? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yourself.
Not become disconnected when you're raising a kid.
Right.
Keep your friends.
Right. Absolutely. Right. You've heard the airplane analogy, right? When your oxygen masks come down, what you got to do. You got to put the oxygen mask on the kid or you. It would be you. Because they tell you.
Yeah, because if you pass out,
your kid's done. If you put the oxygen mask on your kid first, and that's like literal, right?
Right.
And we've talked about that on the show before. So God, self, then your spouse. That's got to be higher than the kid in priority sets. Now, again, they move around on any given day. The most important thing might be, hey, if I don't get this work project done, we ain't going to have anything to eat.
Right.
So that's top priority right now today. So it moves around a little bit in flexible ways. But, if you don't have yourself and your spouse, then you don't have much, the effects on marriage and stuff. You don't have the issues of self-care. You don't have the things that sustain a whole family. And oftentimes, the kids are put on the highest priority rung.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work. So God, self, spouse, then the kids, they're fourth in line. Or third in line, given your religious belief, right? Then your family. Then your friends, they're on the list, but they're way down. But they're on the list. And work is also on the list, right? So the order of priority is a great way to kind of go and think about, what do I need to focus on? Highlighted self-care, friendships. Letter F. This actually came from an article that I found first time that we did this show. And one of the things that I kind of saw on there is, they're talking about during the first early stages of parenting, like, cut people some slack, And then I said, instead of that, can we cut ourselves some slack? Adam, were you the best parent?
Absolutely not.
I was. No, I'm just kidding. I was in some moments just a terrible parent.
Well, I mean, obviously you would think that because you were trying to. What is the term you used? Trying to be the parent of the year.
The parent of the year was my goal, says my brother. Right? I mean, listen. Cut yourselves some grace. Cut yourself some slack. Realize that you're absolutely going to make mistakes in this process as you go through the relationship with your parents. I'll be the first to tell you I made many mistakes, if you want to call them mistakes. I was very unproductive in many times. Right up to yesterday when I was on my kid's case, I think like too much. And I'm not going to go into why that was, but that's constantly evolving in your relationship. And I'll tell you, man, society just crashes down on parents and tells us that we're all doing it wrong. Get control of your kid. Don't let them have the social media. There's all this judgment. So a big part of the solution is all of us as a society, our family circles and systems, and then our own head cutting some slack and stop being so judgmental and shaming towards how we parent. All right. Did I jump on a soapbox too long there, too hard?
No, I'm sitting there thinking. I'm sitting there thinking the same thing about the cut yourself some slack, because you're going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, and sometimes you got to realize that that mistake might not have been that bad. It's your kids. You have to let them make mistakes,
right?
So they can learn.
We learn a lot.
So maybe when you make a mistake, that's fine too, because you got to learn that was a mistake.
Yeah,
you can do better next time.
And the same thing goes in the solution, whatever number or letter we're on. Same thing for grandparents. Let me tell you something. I learned something I thought was fascinating. My neighbor, or my daycare worker, said to me one time, she said, "You grandparents are dangerous." I was like, "What?" She's like, "They're dangerous." I was like, "Okay, you got to explain that to me," because we relied a lot on our grandparents and our parents to guide us and all. But she made the point. She's like, "You think about it, man. Grandparents definitely have been through this. This is not their first rodeo. They like to tell you that. It was 30 years ago. 25, 20, 40 years ago that they were doing this. And I'm going to tell you what, between the 3 years that I had my first child to my second child, I forgot half of what I did and half of what I knew and tried to figure it out. And I have a very specific moment when I found that out or figured that out with my second kid. I pop a bottle at his face, and he's holding him. I'm trying to get him to eat, and he's spitting it out. He's unhappy. He's ticked off. You know why?
Why?
Forgot to put the freaking bottle in the microwave and give it a little heat. Right? And I'm like, oh, that's
Didn't like that cold milk.
No, it was terrible. And so I thought, if I'm forgetting that in 3 years, what about 30 years later?
Right.
So I think she hit something. I think she's a little bit right. But seriously, though, grandparents are great. They're terribly supportive. They have a role. They're in there. They're vitally a part of a family. But they're not going to necessarily do it your way all the time. You got to have some flexibility. You got to have some patience. Give them some grace. Give them some ease. Let them formulate what kind of role they want to have. And that's hard because, again, judgments, Well, I think you should be doing this. I think you should be doing that.
I can see that being a problem.
Right. It's very, listen, we just throw judgments around all over the place. Lastly, I'll tell you, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about Craig kind of saying, well, gosh, man, this whole lost decade, it sounds negative. It's really a beautiful time. Our world now is so fast-paced. Our world now is so action-oriented. We have our kids in so many activities. And I tell you what, post-COVID, we're going to be shocked at how many activities we have ourselves, the kids, involved in, because it's about ready to fire back up in a big way.
So everybody's going to be doing something.
What's that?
Everybody's going to want to be doing something.
Yes. They're all going to get back into all these activities, and it's just going to be a big explosion in about August and September, right? Enjoy it. Enjoy the moment. Enjoy the stage.
Seize the moment.
You'll never get it back. It's absolutely awesome. But you really got to pay attention to your own well-being, your own mental health. So as the title says, maintain yourself. Don't lose that. It's really important. And that helps you immediately to become much more effective in this very vital relationship of a parent-child. What you think in summary and closing, questions, thoughts? How'd it go, man? What do you think about doing a podcast?
I thought it wasn't that bad.
Little fun?
Wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
The beer was a little warm.
The beer.
There's no beer here.
No.
There's no beer here.
No keg stands.
No.
All right. Well, I appreciate coming on. You're going to be hanging out with us for a few weeks and whatnot this month, right?
Yep.
We're picking months out of the year, and you got June, brother.
Hopefully, the next episode will be more interesting on my part.
How so? What do you mean by that?
I mean my involvement.
I think you did great.
Not you, me, man. It's all me.
No, I think you're fine. Well, I appreciate you hanging out with us.
Welcome.
Not sure where we're going next week. We will be figuring that out. I got to get used to this new routine. In closing, too, though, questions for the show. I'm going to start saying this in the beginning. You know, somebody recently told me they weren't sure how to put questions. And I'm like, how do you not know? So contact@throughwiththerapist's.com, right? That's where, you know, I promise, ever there's a show, question that you have, ever you want to kind of post anything on any of our social media sites, 100% of them will be responded to. So contact@throughwiththerapist's.com is a great way to email questions before, after, during, and we'll begin. You know, sometimes we put them on the air. So we'd love to hear your feedback and questions and thoughts because, as the show says, Adam, what were we trying to do? We're trying to figure this out together, right?
That's right.
All right. Thanks for hanging, Adam. We will see you all next week. Until then, take care.